Hello, everyone. My name is Cynthia Jones, and welcome to the Profitable Business Mindset Summit. We are having this summit to raise awareness about how your mindset plays an important role in our lives' outcomes and development. Today, we have the pleasure of having serial entrepreneur David Finkel is the CEO of Maui Mastermind, one of the largest premier business and coaching companies, which has worked with over 100,000 business leaders, helping them grow their company and get their lives back. David clients enjoy an average annual growth rate 5 times higher than the average privately held companies in the United States. And at the same time, these business leaders have dramatically decreased their working hours. Over the past 20 years, David and other Maui coaches and advisors have personally started and scaled companies with an aggregated value of $63 billion. David eats his own cooking, which has allowed him to start the scale and sell multiple successful ventures, be on the board of several other companies, all the while holding his working hours to under 40 per week, taking 10 weeks of vacation each year. The Wall Street Journal best-selling author of 11 books. David syndicate business articles on Inc.com, fastcompany.com, and Forbes.com have geared millions of readers. His work has been featured in such prestigious media outlets as Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg Businessweek, Fox Business, MSNBC, and Inc. magazine. Please welcome David. Hi, David. Hi, David. Can you hear me? Please welcome David. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, Cynthia. Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure.
Yes. I really enjoy reading your bio. I think it's very impressive.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, we'll just jump right into it. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so anyone watching this, first of all, I think I'm proof positive that you don't actually have to have a formal education in business around that. I was an athlete once upon a time, many years ago. I qualify that I'm almost 50 right now. But way back when I was training to play in the Olympics, I played in the U.S. field hockey team, and I was
Wow.
living overseas and playing for foreign club teams. And then I got injured before the 96 Olympics. So it was in 1995. Yeah, and I ended up having surgery. It took out a small tumor that was in my hip that was growing on top of a nerve they didn't know. And I went back to figure out, what do I want to do next? And I don't know if anyone ever would have had me as an employee. At that point, I was pretty focused on, and really didn't like the idea of working for somebody else. And I made a jump. I made a jump to start my own business. I partnered up with a gentleman who had some experience in a particular niche, and we built a fairly successful company. It was working in a niche. It was in the world of real estate. We were buying and leasing and or renting out, at the heyday of it, several hundred houses a year we would pick up. And we were also coaching, round numbers, about 2,000 real estate investors a year in our coaching program. And that would have been, starting in 97 all the way through. And I sold that company, my half of it anyway, in 2005. So I think the first thing I'd say is I didn't have any background in business. I had to figure this out the hard way. I've always loved to write, so even back then I wrote books during that experience. But round about the launch of my other company, I wrote a book called Build a Business, Not a Job, and that book kind of encapsulated what do we think about in terms of scaling a company beyond just you. And I think the thing that probably impacted me most was this idea of, how do I have a life? Way back when I was working 70, 80 hours a week, Cynthia, like a lot of your listeners, I felt tied to putting out business challenges, meetings. I was on the road at the heyday, probably 2.5 weeks every single month. And it worked okay when I was single or when it was just my wife and I, but it didn't work later on when we started thinking about having a family and other things. And I started getting ambitions to grow the company even bigger. And actually, I think probably the other relevant book for listeners here would be Scale. It's a book I wrote with a co-founder of Priceline.com, friend of mine, Jeff Hoffman. And when I held my twin, I have 3 sons. My 2 oldest are twins, Matthew and Adam. When I held them in the delivery room in my arms,
Right.
it just wasn't an option to work 70, 80 hours. It became
Exactly.
off the table. And I liken it this way, Cynthia. Um, an astronaut goes into space, and I've had astronauts actually come to some of our events before. And one of them I'm thinking about now, Millie, who was on the space shuttle, she shared, you have certain consumables of oxygen and fuel and food and water, and that's it. You can't pull over and get more. And so I made 3 consumable decisions in my business life. Number 1, I said, I'm not going to work more than 40 hours per week on average. That's my hard stop for
Wow.
all the different businesses that I run and all the financial activities. I'm going to make it work. And that decision automatically forces me to crowd out some of the lower value stuff. Second decision, I'm going to take at least 10 weeks off of real vacation, not the
Wow.
vacation that says I'm going
Wow.
to go somewhere nice and work remotely, but real vacation time. And what that forced me to do
Mhm.
was to build an actually sustainable business that was beyond just me, a business independent of me.
Mhm.
And then the third decision I made was I wasn't going to travel nearly as much. And that forced us to change our business model, because back then we used to do a lot of workshops and teaching that way. And as we've done over the last decade with the coaching program, we've morphed it to have travel be much smaller part, and we can still help business owners of companies scale their companies and actually have a life. And
Wow.
that last experience was written in the Freedom Formula. So that's kind of my background in the business side.
Wow. Wow. With that, I will go into the second question, because it looks like you had to adjust some things, maybe you were thinking and things like that. So how can we start to eliminate that limiting mind belief that, we have to work 70 hours, we have to work when we're on
Yeah.
vacation, all these things that, as I said, are limiting beliefs. They're not necessarily true.
That's a really good question. And so I'm going to frame it from, and it's very present on my mind, because the last book that I wrote, The Freedom Formula, was exactly this challenge of I want to have meaningful, rewarding work. I want it to fulfill, and I want it to reward for take care of myself and my family.
Mhm.
How do I do that at the same time that I don't want my work to take over my life? I want to be able to have business success, but I don't want to have to sacrifice family, health, or life to do it. And there is some mindset piece to that, but there's also some mechanics. I think if I've been known for anything in the world of the books that I write, is I don't tell people just what they need to do. I tell them how to do the what to do. But from a standpoint, if you think about it, there are 2 different economies that operate in the world, and this is what a model that I look at it as. You have the time and effort economy, and in the time and effort economy, simply you get paid for hours, effort, and attitude.
Mhm.
You want to earn more, you want to be more successful in your business, work harder, pull more hours, focus in on, it's a world of grit, gore, and sacrifice, and it works, but
Yes.
it has a ceiling that it doesn't go past.
Mhm.
I can go and I can grow my company 10%, 25%, maybe even double it, but
Mhm.
there is a point that I just cap out.
Mhm.
Not only do I not have any more hours to work, but those extra hours have a
Mhm.
diminishing or degrading value to my business. Where once upon a time, 1 extra hour gave me 1 extra hour of value. When I'm starting to work 60, 70, 80, 90 hours, 1 extra hour gives me less than 1 hour of extra return.
Mhm.
So that brings me to the second economy. We call this the value economy. In the value economy, you don't get paid for time. You
Mhm.
get paid for value created. And this says my choice of what to focus on and how to focus on it,
Yes.
my ability to get my team and my company to focus on the best opportunities and the best ways, I can create magnified results. I mean,
Yes.
we've all heard, we're supposed to work smarter, not harder. But what isn't immediately obvious is, how do you do that in the face of a flood of emails,
Mhm.
customer demands,
Yes.
bosses or coworkers who interrupt what's going on,
Yes.
all the app feeds that we have. And
Mhm.
so really what the Freedom Formula was my best attempt to operationalize working smarter. And I'll kind of give a quick distinction here. So and I made it easier for myself, I pulled it up here. But in the time and effort economy, we say, gosh, my boss is going to be upset if she sees I'm not working,
Exactly.
if she sees I'm not busy.
Exactly.
But in the value economy, my
Mhm.
boss is going to be upset if he or she sees that I'm not creating value. Time and effort economy says, if I don't check my email and my app feeds, then I'm gonna miss something important. The
Yes.
value economy knows that if I keep interrupting my best work to
Yes.
check my app feed and my email, I can't contribute value.
Mhm.
And when you look at it this way, I look at how I've done these things, how the clients that we've coached over the years, several thousand of these businesses, I study very successful entrepreneurs, and what we have in common is it's not that we do more. Actually, we do less. But the less that we do matters a whole lot more. And we have to find ways to get, not just for ourselves to work smarter, but how do we get our team to do the same? So we put our best talent and attention on the limited few areas in the business that create the most value. And that means you have to reclaim some of your time. You have to identify the things that create the most value. You have to redesign how you structure your work environment, your processes, your buffers and filters, so that you can crowd that low value stuff out and actually have extraordinary results. So
Yes. Yes, I've been reading about that a lot, value, and how to add value to myself and take away that factor of trading my time for money. Yeah. Yes, very interesting. Yeah. So the next question would be, what is the biggest investment you have made regarding your success?
Probably the biggest investment I would say would be twofold. Number one, starts off investing in yourself. I mean, there's no question about that. Early on, when I couldn't afford anything else, it was books. I used to read 120, 150 books a year, not nonfiction.
Wow.
I still read fiction for that, and I would listen to books. Later on, it was taking different workshops or classes, and this is in the late 90s, so they didn't actually have all the online resources that you can get for free, that or for low cost with that part. I used to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on that part. And at a certain point later on, the investment you make in yourself is more about pushing yourself to do things that make you scared. And all of us have it. I mean, I can think earlier this week, there was someone who I really admired in the business world who, New York Times bestselling author, doesn't matter who it is, but I was intimidated, but I still reached out to the guy through a contact that I had that knew him.
Right.
And things like that. What scares you? So the investment I make is saying I'm more vested in the result that I want to accomplish, the impact I want to have, than on the temporary discomfort of feeling afraid. And so I'm still going to feel afraid. We all do. That's a human emotion. But I'm going to get myself to take action in the presence of my fears. And the second investment, by far, as I started to grow my companies, would be in good people who work with me and investing in their success.
Wow, that's a very good takeaway. I too have challenged myself to start reading, but now after hearing you, maybe I have to up my number. Challenge myself, and it's nonfiction as well. I'm challenging myself to read at least 2 to 3 books a month, because as you said, like the reach I'm trying to reach, I can get to know that through the reading. Yeah.
That's great. Now, nowadays, just to be clear on that, I read, my goal, and I make sure I do it every year, is at least 50 books, and I'll listen to a lot of them just because I like to take walks or other things, but I don't do the 100, 150 anymore. Now that I have kids, I'd rather spend more time with them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And so then how do you envision your company, Maui Mastermind, growing in the future and keep scaling at the rate you would like it to scale at?
Sure. It's a great question. So first of all, what is it we actually do? If you were to say, David, what does Maui Mastermind do? You could say, well, it's a business coaching company. We help entrepreneurs who have companies, $500,000 or $1 million on the low end, 20 to 50 million on the upper end. How do they grow their company and make it independent of them? But really what we do is we help them fall in love with their business again. Every business owner starts off and initially the business is exciting and it's something, a work of passion, and they enjoy it. But there reaches a point that if you don't build that business independent of you, I watch it. These business owners, they burn out, whether that take place 3 years in or 30 years in. And I don't care how financially successful they are in the business, if they're not enjoying what they're doing, if the business is so reliant on them, number one, they're underserving the market. They're cheating people who could have been better served by their product or service, who will never get to work with them because they're at capacity, and they're cheating out their own selves. They're doing something just because they're afraid of trying something different. So where I see ourselves is we'll continue to grow and scale, but the key part for us is we always want to help a business owner on 2 metrics, right? One is growth. Of course, a client's going to have increased sales and increased profit.
Yes.
But more important than just that is they're going to have increased, we call it owner independence. The
Okay.
business has to have a strategic depth. It's going to have the systems, the team, the internal culture, so that the business really is not just reliant on any one person, especially just the owner. I mean, the stats are pretty horrifying. You know, Wells Fargo and Gallup did a survey, and they found that it was, what was it, like 60 or 70% of the business owners in the U.S. were working 6 days a week, and 20% were working 7 days a week. According to the U.S. Census, over 85% of businesses are owner reliant. They rely on the owner to either run the sales, marketing,
Uh-huh.
operations, or the finance pillar in the company. The business can't survive without them on that part.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always wanted to be someone who can help a business person, you know, fall in love with their company again by building it better.
And then too, if the business is so self-reliant on you, the CEO owner, then how in the world could you take off anytime? How would you be able to take off maybe 4 or 5 weeks or whatever you determine to take off if the business is solely reliant on you so much? It would become
That's
very
right.
difficult.
That's right. And a couple of quick takeaways for someone watching
Mhm.
this summit here. You know, one thing that they can do is simply just ask themselves, first of all, um, in the business that I built,
Uh-huh.
where is it in relationship to independent for me? There are 3 levels of building a company. You know, level 1 is a startup.
Right.
Of course, you've got no control, no freedom. You're completely scrambling just to get early customers.
Uh-huh.
A level 2 business is owner reliant. It works, but it works because the owner is there every day to make it work.
Uh-huh.
A level 3 business is a business that truly is systems driven, has a management team in place to lead the company. And you can just ask yourself as you look at it, where does my business fall in? Am I a level 2 company? The first decision that any business leader has to make
Uh-huh.
is the decision to build an owner independent company and make it a stated goal. I mean, Cynthia, so many business owners I meet initially are afraid to tell their team about that. And I say, that's crazy. It should terrify them that the company is reliant on you, because if you get hurt
Mhm.
or you have a change of heart or something goes on in your personal life, they're out of a job. And so when I look at it, we tell our clients, look, be really clear with your team. Hey, I want to build this business so it's independent of any of us, so it can be strong enough to stand on its own footing. And that means for you more opportunities to grow, to take on more responsibilities and grow as a professional.
Uh-huh.
Opportunities for greater rewards. As you create more value for the company, you can earn more. The
Uh-huh.
ability to have other perks around that part, and to make a difference, to have your work matter, to have a voice in what we're doing. You know, most people think what keeps somebody good at a business, if it's a small company, is how we pay them. It's not. If what we pay them is the only thread tying someone to your business, the first time something jars that relationship, they're going to quit. That thread's going to snap. So how do I give them autonomy? How do I give them respect? How do I give them ability to have a voice? How do I give them a certain flexibility where it makes practical sense?
Mhm.
You know, if their daughter has a sporting program, their son's in a play, how do I make sure that
Yes.
they go to that and they have that time,
Yes.
provided it makes sense in the time?
Mhm.
Those are all things we can do to keep them there.
Mhm.
The second thing I would say is, you know, we've all heard about Pareto's principle, that 80-20 rule.
Mhm.
One of the things we talk about in the freedom formula is this idea that Pareto's principle just doesn't go far enough. And if we take Pareto's principle, this 80-20 rule, to its logical extreme, we know that if 80% of what we do gives me 20% of the result, and 20% of what I do gives me 80% of the result, let's think about that. What would 20% of the 20% give me?
Mhm.
80% of the 80%. So what it means is there's this 4% sweet spot that's a magnitude more valuable than just that 20%. If I do the math through, it gives us 64% of the result. I wouldn't worry about the math, but let's play it one more time. If 20% of the 20% gives me 80% of the 80%, do it one more time. And we know that 20% of the 20% of the 20% gives me 80% of the 80% of the 80%. And the math works this way: that magic 1% gives me roughly half the result. And no, I don't believe the numbers are exact, but I will tell you, it's the difference between me having a coaching client every quarter step out of their company for 2 or 3 hours to create the one-page plan for the
Mhm.
next 90 days.
Mhm.
Or it's me taking the time to do a really thorough interview for a key hire that I'm going to make, or me making the decision that if I've got 3 different service lines and one is really profitable and one is marginally profitable, I'm going to take all the effort from my marginally profitable and reinvest it into my more profitable one.
Yes.
Just that decision alone might have only taken me half an hour of analysis and thinking, and maybe just even 5-10 hours of actually implementation to make that switch. But that could be the difference between going from X to 2x,
Yes.
5x
Yes.
without working longer, harder. Longer, harder is not the answer. Working longer, harder is the problem.
Yes, yes. Wow, that is so good. And I like how you emphasize on taking care of the people who are working for you, because as you said, you know, someone else come with the higher dollar amount, the person is gone.
Sure.
And that, I believe that's, unfortunately, that's the way companies are really going, you know, big companies today. So people are jumping. I do contracting work as well. And if you tell somebody you've been on a contract 2 years, they're like, wow, that's a lifetime. You know, nobody, because somebody else is going to come and give you a higher dollar. So you just go with the other person. Yeah. Yeah. And I wish, I really wish that we would go back to that model of emphasizing more of the family. You know, what do they need? How do I retain this person for a longer term than this short term?
Cynthia, whenever a business owner has a turnover, they have a moment to learn a lesson. And I'll give an example. One of our coaching clients that we talk about in the book, his name's Kess, and he had turnover in a key position. Not having hired that position probably cost him $250,000 of lost opportunity, simply by having one open position that took him probably 6 months to fill. He's not the only one. I've had the same thing in my companies before. If I have a key opening, you know, that opening might be for a $50,000 or $150,000 a year team member, but it might be $500,000 of revenue that is lost for not having that key person there, or more, for 3 months or 6 months. And so we think about you know, scrambling and for making that higher, but wouldn't it be better if we looked backwards and said, how do I keep my key people? You know, how do I find ways for them to grow? How do I find ways for them to, and one of the things I give an example here in the Freedom Formula, in the second half of the book, we have a chapter in there about engage your team. And so, you know, if you look at the world of nonprofits, in the world, over $1 trillion each year is donated time in terms of how we work, unpaid work, in volunteer organizations. We have a lot to learn from the world of nonprofits about how what does someone want when they volunteer for a nonprofit? They want a sense of identity, a sense of meaning, a sense of contribution, a sense of having some control, having some fun, some connection. These are all things that we can think, how do we bring that into the workplace so that I have more than one thread holding a team member? Compensation matters. I have to be fair. Compensation to a team member generally means, am I valued and respected? And I'm being, and am I really being treated in a manner that takes care of my basic fundamental needs? But once I'm paying fairly, roughly, there's no way to get it perfect, but I'm in the right neighborhood, money ceases to be what keeps people performing, and it ceases to be what keeps people retained. With some few exceptions, yes, there is a percentage of people, it's all about, you know, money, but mostly that money for them is about a scorecard. Even on salespeople, you say, oh, we should make a variable-based, commission-based. Even they are much more incentivized by the scorecard of feeling like they're winning once they get past a certain threshold of earning, whatever that is for their comfort level.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So we're going to go to our last question here. Is there anything that you would like to discuss that hasn't been discussed thus far?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty broad question, but I would say it this way. I'll give you 3 answers to that. So the first piece is, you know, if you're watching this training here for right now, I would say you own your own company or you're a key leader in someone else's business. You have to ask yourself, I might say I believe in the value economy, but if I were there watching you and I were following you for a day, what would your behavior say? You know, the business person who turns to his team member and says, hey, I emailed you 4 hours ago and I haven't heard. Well, hang on a second. If for the last 3.5 hours, your person was in a conference room with 2 of your other key people deciding on how to solve the biggest challenge your number 1 client was dealing with, why would I want them to interrupt that by looking at their email, right? So how am I playing, which economy am I operating in? The second point I would bring up is for yourself, now your model of the world is one thing, but now it's going back to the mechanics. There are some simple, easy things that a viewer can do to make it easy to reclaim some of their time and to put their best attention on their best place. I'll give one more idea that comes from the Freedom Formula. So here's an easy one. I call it my buffet theory of time mastery. So, you know, you go to a buffet. What do most people do? We go straight, especially if it's an expensive buffet, we go straight to the desserts or the very fancy, unhealthy stuff. And we fill up on all this junk. most of us in the business day, we fill up our business day with empty calories, with junk stuff that we do.
Mm,
At
mm,
a buffet, the most important plate of food is your first plate of food.
mm,
You know, if I have good vegetables and high quality proteins,
mhm.
at the very least, I'm going to get my nutrition and I'm going to fill up my stomach so that some of the other stuff gets crowded out the junk. Same thing in my business day. One day a week, I'm going to make it my focus day. One day a week, at least, I'm going to give myself a 2 to 4 hour block of time that I actually put on my calendar as a recurring block every Tuesday from 9 to 11, every Thursday. And I'm going to hold that really to just do my highest value activities, that 1%, that 4% type of activity. And then on all the other days, we'll call that a push day. We just push things forward one more step. And even on a push day, I'm going to block off 1 hour on each of those push days.
Wow.
I've got 7 hours out of a 40-hour work week. I know a lot of your listeners are working more than that, but even that 7 hours, that's 8.5 weeks every year of full-time work to do higher value things.
Wow.
Of course I can create more value.
Mhm,
The reason we don't create more value is because what we do is we fill up that plate with junk stuff, and
mhm.
then we give the nutritious activities, the high value activities, slivers of our remnant time. 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, but I have to flip that on the head and do it that way. So
Mhm.
those are just some quick, simple examples of what somebody can do. Those would kind of be what I would share. And I'll tell you, we have right here as part of this a link that you can download, a sneak peek, the first 55 pages of that book. I hope you enjoy it. It's roughly 20% of the book. If you have a great experience, I'm hoping that you get a copy for yourself and for your key leaders in your company. I think
Yeah.
it's a fantastic book. They're at mauimastermind.com/. Profitable. So that's all they need to do to download that free part. And welcome to it. I think they're going to enjoy it. I just ask if they get lots of value. One thing I'm going to ask from you: would you be willing to get onto Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever you got the book and just review it? It used to be the fact that so and so endorsed the book and she's great or he's wonderful. No one looks at that nowadays. I mean, we still get all these wonderful endorsements from people that I know, but what really pushes a book into the world, and I'm really passionate about the subject matter because I think it's going to make a difference to get people their lives back,
Wow.
is the reviews from other people. So if you get any value from it, if you would take a moment and even just 5 minutes or less and review it, it would be a wonderful gift you could give back, and I would say thank you.
Wow. Thank you. I mean, that was such great information, such good steps, good practical steps that we can start implementing right away. There's no need to delay. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us, encourage us, and give us good information.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia.
All right, bye.